Hey there, good afternoon to you. 406 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We're making sense of the news. Coming up, Adam Kredo will be with us from the Washington Free Beacon. That's at 4:30. Then 5 o'clock, Mark Paoletta is here to respond to the latest nonsense that the left has for Clarence Thomas, the great Supreme Court Justice. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Last night at that NBC debate, Lester Holt was the moderator, mixed it up with Senator Tim Scott. Here's the moment.
We should focus on being energy dominant. America is the home to more energy resources than any other country on the planet. We can reduce the price of energy. We can reduce the price of food and the price of electricity if we focus on my build here, don't borrow from China plan that is embedded. The Made in America strategy creates 10 million new jobs in 3 different areas. One is innovation. Second is the high-tech manufacturing. And the third is the energy economy. We have an opportunity as Americans to actually export the surplus energy that we create in our nation and disconnect from China and from murderous dictators and tyrants around the world.
Your time is up, but let me just follow up. The idea of pumping gas, of turning on pipelines, that doesn't make gas cheaper that day. I'm talking about you become president. What can you do specifically to help people feel better about their situation or be better with their situation?
Well, actually, it does, to be honest with you. The way that the economy works is it works on the ability to anticipate excess supply versus the demand. When that happens, confidence drives our prices down because we know there's going to be a greater surplus.
Well, as they say in epic rap battles of history, who won? Who lost? Well, the man who's going to help us decide is Daniel Turner, founder and executive director of Power of the Future, joins us now. Hello, Daniel.
Oh, Vince, great to be on your program.
Let's see here. So I have Tim Scott saying, let's lower gas prices by starting to drill for more oil. Lester Holt says, well, that's not going to lower gas prices right away. And Tim Scott says, actually, yes, it will. Who got it right?
Yeah. Well, absolutely, Tim Scott, and surprise, surprise, I support more oil and gas exploration. But really, what Lester did last night was he showed the general ignorance of the mainstream media when it comes to how the economy works, what the energy industry is, and that ignorance, and I mean ignorance in the benevolent way, right? Genuinely no knowledge. But that ignorance permeates the entire Democrat establishment. So there's Lester saying, well, if you put more gas and oil, that's not going to lower prices. You know, I bought my mansion in the Hamptons. Lester Holt makes $7 million a year.
Wow.
Now, I don't begrudge him his contract. I wish I had a $7 million a year contract.
And that voice.
Yes, but those are the people who will tell you the economy is fine. Because, you know, what's $4 a dozen eggs? So your electric bill went from $400 a month to $525. What is that? I bet you Lester Holt hires someone to pay his bills. So these are the folks who will tell you, oh, big deal about energy. Energy is nothing. The economy's great because they don't feel it.
Right. Lester could not tell you what a gallon of gas costs right now. When was the last time he filled up his car?
Nor could he tell you, you know, what groceries cost. The last Democrat to try groceries was Barack Obama, famously in 2008 when he was at the Iowa caucus, and he said, has anyone seen the price of arugula at Whole Foods these days? I don't know if you remember that line, and everyone laughed saying, Iowans probably don't eat a ton of arugula, and there's no Whole Foods in the entire state of Iowa. That's how aloof they are.
Oh, that's funny.
The nuts and bolts of what the American people are facing. So
yeah, he was ahead of his time, though.
Tim Scott.
He was ahead of his time. I've come around to arugula since that famous moment. It's not bad, actually. Arugula works. But it does also remind me, didn't Romney say at one point that he was amazed by the way that self-checkouts work or something? It was like, honestly, it's just some of the funniest moments, like when you try and fake it, you know, you're showing up at the grocery store.
And again, and I don't begrudge those people, but, you know, let me put in a reminder of going back to 15 and 16. You had another billionaire like Romney and like others, like John Kerry, who have run for office. But Trump didn't even try to pretend.
No.
You know, he didn't try to put on boots when he went to the Iowa caucus. He arrived in his helicopter, and he gave rides to the children. So it shows you the disconnect. And you know, that is the reason why I started my organization, because the disconnect between our energy policy and the American people, but also energy workers, is monumental. It is an abyss that we have to bridge, because when people like Lester Holt, who will tell you all about climate change and they'll tell you about trans issues, with authoritarian haughtiness, when they don't understand that more oil and gas lowers prices, oof, we got a big problem in our media.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. And that's just in terms of the economics here. The energy industry is forward-looking, right? So gas prices will actually come down, to reiterate this point, when it's obvious that more drilling is on the way.
Absolutely. I mean, gas prices are now stubbornly high, even though production levels have recently gone to pre-COVID, right? So people are saying, well, we're producing over 13 million barrels of oil a day like we did. So it's proof that, this isn't Joe Biden's problem. Well, the reason why prices haven't come down despite production going up is because it's still future looking. And future looking, they say, yeah, but all this is going to start slowly disappearing because we don't have any permits. Joe Biden has vowed no more oil, no more gas. He takes pride in it. So, yeah, energy prices are not currently. They are looking forward. It's also why when you have a major event, an explosion, God forbid, Tim Scott got his way and we started bombing Iran and you have oil at $2.50, it's looking forward. It says, oh, boy, we're going to be in a pickle soon, and prices immediately change.
Sure. Okay, so that's the other piece of this. I know this is your business, but as a result, you do look at it really closely, Daniel. How frustrated are you when you see all of these headlines about these global conflicts that at their core, it's always been the case that energy is right at the center of so much of this, very, very little discussed. But the idea that Iran can continue to conduct all of its terror attacks on Israel and now on American targets all across the Middle East, the idea that Russia can invade Ukraine and power up his war machine, the idea that China can continue to grow in its power as our adversary by relying on Iranian oil, all of this, it all comes back to energy. If we increase our hand in this particular fight, it really redounds to our benefit in so many different ways.
100%. And to pat myself on the back, I wrote an op-ed 3 years ago this month, November 20th of 2020, when it was pretty clear Biden was going to get sworn in. And I wrote it for Real Clear Energy. And I said, two things are going to happen. Everything in America is going to get very expensive, and there will be war in the Middle East. And I wrote that not because I'm some genius, because you've met me. You know I'm not. Right? I am not the smartest person in the room, but I feel like the guy in the Titanic when they said, well, maybe it's not going to sink. And he was like, oh, yeah, it's a mathematical certainty. Right? Like, this is just the way the industry works, the way the world works. And so when you have a president who says, I am going to make sure there's no more oil and gas, well, the result is prices go through the roof. And when people like Russia and Iran have a lot more money, they don't buy, Hess the way Chevron just bought Hess. They don't buy other corporations. They build bombs and they go to war. And I wish it weren't that way, Vince. I really do. But it is. That's the way of the world. And that's why we need to outproduce them to keep prices low.
Yes, and we'll decrease our wars. That's the upside. So the other piece here is the so-called green industry. What are your thoughts on the fact that we're watching a lot of these wind projects all of a sudden failing in spectacular fashion off of in the Atlantic side of the country right now?
Well, it's what happens when you have political goals that are not based in the market. And none of these were market-based goals. These are politicians saying, by the year 2035, X% of our electric grid will come from wind. And when you have political-based goals, you have to do some pretty stupid things to try to achieve them because you've taken market pricing out of the equation. And so, you're going to have these epic failures. The problem this time around is that the Inflation Reduction Act, as they have dubbed it, right, it gave John Podesta the control of hundreds of billions of dollars. Daily Caller broke a story not long ago of the number of folks who were meeting secretly with John Podesta, and they're all looking for money. So all of these failures, these bankruptcies, are going to be thwarted by John Podesta, and they're going to say, we are investing in wind and solar, we're investing in renewables. But really all they're doing is bailing out an industry because their entire reputation is on the line. The entire green agenda is on the line. So heck, the Rivian truck company, that silly-looking futuristic truck that doesn't even have a hitch, which makes people like me who have a farm laugh, because what's the purpose of a pickup truck if you can't tow anything? But Rivian met secretly with John Podesta looking for money. Right? Rivian's never turned a profit. So is Rivian a profitable company? Well, If they get a couple $100 million from John Podesta, they sure are. And he has hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so when people say Solyndra is a drop in the bucket compared to how much money John Podesta controls.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point. In fact, Podesta is really very much a Soros-like figure, except he's using American taxpayer money to flex his power for sure. Daniel Turner, thank you as always from Power of the Future. Really nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Vince.
That's again Daniel Turner. That Lester Holt question was a doozy, but I have to say, I don't remember who were the networks that hosted the debates. It was Fox first, and then was it Fox Business? Oh, Fox Business had the second one. Well, it would be unfair to make a one-to-one comparison against all of them, but I did think that last night, somehow by some miracle, it did seem like NBC's pacing was the best, didn't it? In terms of just, they shouldn't have been moderating a debate at all. That should not have happened. Like Lester Holt, Kristen Welker. Like, what's the RNC doing? That's insane. But the pacing was just fine. The candidates fought each other some, but, they made it through it. There wasn't a lot of cacophony, that was disrupting the whole debate. They were able to kind of move along. Hugh Hewitt was up there, the conservative radio host. And it was kind of remarkable. I don't think anybody really had much of a complaint. Also, the big issue, you know what I thought was going to happen last night in terms of topics? I thought they were going to spend the whole damn thing on abortion. I thought NBC was going to go wall to wall with, why are you killing women, and just doing that the whole time. They didn't do that, actually. There was one sequence on abortion. They asked all of them, what's basically their policy prescription going forward. They all offered varying answers. Although, what was her face? Nikki Haley, she claimed she was pro-life and then offered a very aggressively pro-abortion answer. It was one of the weirdest answers I've ever heard out of a pro-life person. But, yeah, that was it. And it reminded me, back in 2015, there was a debate at Hofstra with the Republican candidates where Lester Holt was also the moderator. That was in the 2015 cycle. That's when Donald Trump was on that stage. And I was there. I was there at Hofstra. And I remember this because, you tend to remember the conversations you've had with Donald Trump if you've ever had one. And I did. I was thinking about this today. I was like, oh, yeah, I talked to Trump about Lester Holt. I'm not sure I've ever publicly shared this audio or not. We may have included it in some sort of written Daily Caller report, but here's Trump. He walked by me on the rope line in the spin room right after the debate that Lester Holt had moderated. And I asked him, what did you think of Lester Holt's performance? Here's how the president answered. Well, then just Mr. Trump answered.
Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, right behind you. Right here, Mr. Trump. Lester Holt tonight. Lester Holt tonight.
I thought Lester did great.
And he was fact-checking you several times tonight. He didn't treat Hillary the same way. What do you think?
Yeah, but it checked out. I thought Lester did a great job. Do you really believe
Yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, he was fact-checking you throughout the whole debate. He wasn't doing that to Hillary Clinton. Yeah, I thought it checked out, though, he said. I thought it checked out. I don't even know what that means. Meaning he was right, his fact checks were correct. I don't even know what you're saying. But he is saying that he thought he was totally fine. And the funny thing about that sequence of events, I couldn't capture it. It didn't capture on my audio. That was just me capturing it on my phone. Right over my right shoulder was Corey Lewandowski, and he turned to a buddy. He hears this, and he goes, hey, Trump just said Lester Holt did a good job. All right, that's what I'm saying tonight. And then Corey went on to do a bunch of television interviews that night. He's like, Lester Holt did a perfectly good job. What a world. What an interesting, very interesting world. There you go. Somebody told me earlier that they think that Lester Holt is a secret conservative. Is there evidence for that? Is there? Maybe there is somewhere. I don't know. I'm not looking at the full body of his work to assess right now, but it's 420. Yeah, the news rocking the Washington, D.C. area this week is that the feds have busted a hooker ring that involved apparently high-profile politicians and rich businessmen. And it was going down in Tysons. There's a lot happening in Tysons. The Tysons has really come along. They've got full-blown prostitution rings there now. Fairfax and Tysons area of Virginia, as well as the Cambridge and Watertown areas of Massachusetts. Here's the acting U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, Josh Levy, this week.
Earlier today, 3 individuals were arrested and charged in federal court with operating a sophisticated, high-end brothels in Cambridge, in Watertown, and in Eastern Virginia. These establishments were allegedly promoted through two different websites, BostonTop10.com
1 second, I'm writing this down.
and Brown Eyes Girls
Wait, go slower.
VA.blog. The three individuals behind these websites facilitated the movement of predominantly Asian women across the United States for
Swalwell's eyebrows pop. Did you say Asian?
sex trafficking and a commercial sex ring, exploiting them in the process. This commercial sex ring was built on secrecy and exclusivity, catering to a wealthy and well-connected clientele, and business was booming until today.
Booming.
It's alleged that the prospective sex buyers in this scheme first had to respond to a survey and provide information online, including their driver's license photos, their employer information, credit card information, and they often paid a monthly fee to be part of this illicit club.
What a bunch of suckers. You didn't see this coming 6 million miles away? There's an Asian hooker ring that requires you to give a full background check before you can use the hookers. Do you not know what's happening to you?
The affidavit that's unsealed in court today alleges that once the buyers were verified, they were then texted and allowed to place orders with commercial sex workers.
They're spying on these people. They're blackmailing them. You dummies. You keep it in your pants and don't give away all of your personal identification to the Asian hooker ring.
They would choose the duration of this encounter they wanted, the types of services they wanted, and they also would receive a menu of different options and different women that they could purchase.
You morons.
Sometimes at rates between $350 and $600 an hour.
You complete idiots.
The menu included photographs of the various women who were available that day.
Oh my gosh. This is... Now, they know everything about you. They can identify moles on your body that nobody else knew about. Boy, some fellas really are morons. All right, so we'll keep track of that story. And who knows, the Justice Department, as corrupt as it is, maybe they're making some of this up, but they say they busted a huge prostitution ring, and we got a bunch of dopes in our own area who straight up gave their driver's license to the prostitution people with the Asian hookers. Hey, coming up, Adam Kredo is going to be with us. We're going to talk about what's going on in the Middle East, American troops under attack, and Iranian-backed terrorists shooting down American drones. Things are getting hot. Hey there, 435 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Mark Paoletta chats with us about the latest effort to attack Clarence Thomas for doing nothing but being a great Supreme Court justice who is trying to get it right. They're trying to hurt him. They don't like that. Mark's going to talk to us about that. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We promise we won't ask for any other personal information other than your name and the town you're calling from. That's all we need. It's not like we're some high-end prostitution ring in Tysons Corner. I need your blood type. I'm like, what? I'm fairly certain you don't need... Yes, we do. We need it. Your bank account numbers, everything. All right, enough about that. Let's see what is happening in the Middle East. We're seeing report after report now of American troops are being injured because of Iranian-backed terrorist organizations. Additionally, the Houthi rebels are bragging that they've shot down an American drone, and the Biden administration has had to respond with a number of strikes of their own. Things are heating up, it surely seems. Let's bring in Adam Kredo. He's a senior writer for foreign policy and national security at the Washington Free Beacon, and he joins us now. Adam, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Is it your impression, too, things are getting dicier by the day in the Middle East?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, although I would also point out that really since the Biden administration took office, and even during the Trump administration, Iranian-backed forces were incredibly active in the Middle East. We just really did nothing about it. Numerous strikes by Iranian proxy groups in Iraq on U.S. positions, the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad, also the Houthi rebel attacks on Saudi Arabian U.S. positions as well. So this is not entirely new, but it takes on a particular significance in light of what Iran-backed Hamas is doing with Israel.
Let me ask about a different issue that involves Israel right now. There's reports now that Israel has agreed to a so-called 4-hour humanitarian pause, that they plan on instituting daily 4-hour pauses right now in Gaza. Is it me? I have felt like this entire debate about pauses is a big phony conversation because Israel, of course, would do everything it can to protect the movement of hostages out of Gaza, wouldn't they? I mean, aren't they obviously pausing attacking any lane where hostages might be moving out?
Yeah, that's correct. And also they're protecting Gazans as they try to move south towards the border with Egypt. You can see, I'm not sure how prevalent the images are in our media here in America, but certainly there are images of IDF tanks protecting humanitarian corridors, something that Hamas is not doing as they try to put civilians into harm's way. So the difference in approach, I think, could not be more stark, yet it's Israel that's under pressure from the U.S. increasingly and, of course, the international community to halt what the maniacs are calling a genocide in Gaza.
Speaking of images, let me ask you, there are a number of news outlets who we are just learning in the last day or so. They had photos. They had access to photos that were from the terror attack on October 7th in Israel, apparently from people who were photographers embedded with Hamas, which is leading to all sorts of questions, including, well, did the New York Times, did CNN, did Reuters, did the AP, all of whom used photos from these particular photographers, did they have advanced knowledge of this terror attack if they had photographers who were embedded with Hamas as the terror attack was conducted? I will add one caveat here that I think is worth exploring, and it appears to be the excuse. There are a number of freelance photographers all around the planet. You really don't know anything about them, but if you get photos, you pay for photos. Is there an excuse for any of this, Adam? And what are you concerned about?
Yeah, look, I think it's probably fair to say we need to see more evidence before we can say the news outlets themselves had advance warning or knew about this attack kind of in real time as it was taking place. But like you said, they use stringers. They hire people who are in the region to take pictures, and it seems to be pretty clear that they were embedded with Hamas prior to the attack and with them as they carried out the attack. It's also something that's been taking place for decades. I remember being surprised by it as a reporter covering the region, a decade and a half ago or 20 years ago, that these folks actually have relationships with Hamas and the terror groups that are implanted with. So the report, while shocking, is not surprising to people who cover the region. These people, I think it's being kind to say they play nice with Hamas. Yes. I think they're actually allied with them. And this is why you were able to see pictures like that in real time. Whether or not the outlets had prior knowledge, I don't think we can say yet.
Well, but there are some obvious things that you would expect a news outlet to do, at least going forward on subjects like this. If you get a photo like that, you need to be clear about its provenance and who exactly is taking these pictures, so you can disclose to your audience the nature, how it got to you, the chain of custody. That should be right there first and foremost. It's fine to publish photos that show real events. That's totally fine. But readers should be aware of who took that photo and why.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's absolutely correct. I think the level of due diligence needs to increase. The Associated Press, New York Times, like you mentioned, CNN, Reuters, the others, they've used these stringers for years and years, and somehow they always seem to be present the moment a terror strike happens. So the questions being raised are natural ones and important ones, and maybe just because of how barbaric the most recent Hamas attacks were. All their attacks are barbaric, but this one in particular, these news outlets will be more discerning with who they choose to associate and hire.
And the other piece of this is Hamas does have a reputation for faking events in order to gin up, like as if some sort of tragedy had just befallen Palestinians, correct?
Absolutely. They're known to not only stage photographs, but, stage photographs of dead bodies, fake blood, the whole works. almost like a Hollywood production. You'll see even moving images, videotape of ambulances running around, and those ambulances stop around the corner, and Hamas and their buddies get out the back of them after making pretend to be dead. This is a tactic they've used for quite some time in order to get the international media on their side, like we're seeing now, and also to create the impression that Israel is killing civilians, when in fact Israel is doing all it can to minimize civilian casualties, as evidenced by the warnings, evidenced by Israel protecting civilians as they march southward towards the Egyptian border. So this is something that people should know Hamas does, and that they cannot always trust the media that's emanating from the Gaza Strip and other areas where terror groups are in control.
Okay, let's give somebody else some more scrutiny. We've got Rashida Tlaib. You're reporting on this this week, Adam. Headline: 6 Tlaib fundraisers linked to terrorism. These would be people who raised money for the Congresswoman. What do we know?
Correct. This comes from Canary Mission. It's a watchdog group that essentially tracks anti-Semites and jihadi elements. And according to their reporting in October, they found 3 individuals with terrorism ties, including 2 Hamas, who helped fundraise for Rashida Tlaib. And now they've discovered 3 more. These are individuals who, again, not just have had ties to Hamas, but have served time in Israeli prisons for alleged crimes, things of this nature. So I think the financial pipeline is becoming quite clear with Tlaib, directly to, again, to be kind, anti-Israel elements. But really, these are people who advocate violence against the Jewish state.
And apparently she's comfortable taking this money, and it shows, certainly, in her time as a congresswoman, she has been deeply credulous of the claims that Hamas is making, including as she was defending herself against what ended up being a censure for her by the United States House. She was reflexively using numbers and statistics provided by Hamas this week as a defense of her behavior.
Correct. Look, you get what you pay for. In this case, the people who supported Tlaib knew how she felt about Israel, knew that she often uses anti-Semitic tropes, promotes anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. This is the person that they wanted to put into Congress, and they're getting exactly what they paid for. Tlaib continued to accuse Israel of bombing a hospital, even after U.S. intelligence and the Biden administration made it very clear that this was Hamas. She would not walk that back. She is out there promoting the propaganda of the people who are on the side of Hamas, of the people who are anti-Israel and want to challenge virtually everything Israel is doing to try to defend its citizens from being raped, set on fire, bombed, attacked while they sleep. And the fundraising channels, I think, speak to those connections and give you a very good look at the people who support Tlaib in this rhetoric here in America, by the way.
Let's talk about some of the other craziness here in America this week. The Israeli actress, best known for playing Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot, she screened footage of the Hamas slaughter of Israelis from October 7th. I believe this is the same footage that was captured by Hamas itself, correct? And then turned into basically a package of horrific video by the Israeli government. Is that right?
Yeah, that appears to be correct.
Okay, so this was in Los Angeles. She shows this footage on Wednesday to convey just how awful the attack was, of course. But there ended up being all sorts of violence outside of the screening because you had a bunch of anti-Israel lunatics rioting outside. Again, the building is called, if you can believe it, the Museum of Tolerance. Yeah, that's where they were trying to air this footage. And you had people attacking. What is going on? How has it gotten to the point that this is not that surprising?
I spoke with Darrell Issa, who's been in Congress for over 2 decades, about this very issue in the past couple of days. I wrote about it this afternoon, if people want to see it on the Beacon. But essentially what he said to me is he's never seen anti-Semitism in America this rampant, not just in the halls of Congress, but across the country, starting on college campuses and really moving into neighborhoods everywhere. The hatred and open hatred of Jews, people tearing down pictures of hostages. I think this is just another symptom of that people are using using Israel and its war against Hamas as an excuse to put on display some feelings that they've always felt, and that's a hatred of Jewish people. It's blatant anti-Semitism. This is not about protecting civilians of Gaza. This is not about an Israel-Hamas war that they see as one-sided and unjustified. I mean, it's about hatred of Jews.
It's illogical all the way through, up to and including the fact that it was Israel that was attacked in the terror attack. So I don't understand. I don't even understand the sentiment in any way. Also in California, in Southern California, we saw a report earlier this week that a 69-year-old Jewish man was struck in the head and killed by what the New York Times refers to as a pro-Palestinian demonstrator. This is just an awful situation. The name of the elderly man, Paul Kessler, he was killed apparently for being Jewish. Do we know much about this story beyond what I'm talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, I only know what I've seen in the press reports that apparently they appear to have a pro-Palestinian professor in for questioning. I'm not sure where that will lead. I've not followed it in terms of reporting terribly closely. But again, I think this is really something that people need to start to wake up to, because there is anti-Semitism in America that is well beyond a minority view. And this war has put it on full display. And I think good Americans everywhere, not just pro-Israel Americans, but Americans who, stand for good and fairness, need to really take a look at what's going on across this country and be very, very cognizant that this is the same type of anti-Semitism that precipitated the Holocaust, the same type of antipathy and apathy that led to the Holocaust and the annihilation of millions of Jewish people. We're standing at a precipice here. This is a really important moment of history, and it's happening in America. It's not just isolated to Europe anymore, and I really do believe that it's an issue Americans need to start to wake up to.
And Adam, in terms of how we address this, I know there's a lot of debate on this subject among people of goodwill. There's some, I think the most aggressive attitudes, they just want to go after these people. If you express this idiocy, I don't know if you want to lock them up, but that does feel like some of the sentiment. In my view, I think that people have the free speech right to be morons. That is true. But we also don't have any obligation to dump state and federal tax dollars into your moronic club where you're advocating for Hamas.
Yeah, I think that's entirely right. And I think the first issue for Congress and for the legislative branch to really take a look at is America's universities, because they're the ones that are, one, fomenting this in children and then mainlining those children into government positions, into the State Department, into the U.S. government, into academia, into jobs all across the country. And this is really where it's starting, and this is where I think lawmakers in the federal government needs to start ending it by taking away their funding dollars, by holding them to account for fomenting anti-Israel and anti-Semitic views on campus where we see violence taking place, because this is really where you can pinpoint the start of this and where it's being incubated.
Yeah, and federal tax dollars shouldn't be going to colleges at all anyway. So this is one more invitation to stop that. Thank you very much, Adam Kredo. Really appreciate your time today from the excellent Washington Free Beacon. Thank you, sir. Well, I guess it's time to impeach the man who thinks the border's totally fine and he has no solutions for its problems. Marjorie Taylor Greene today introduced articles of impeachment for Alejandro Mayorkas.
For what purposes does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A1 of Rule 9, I seek recognition to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House. The form of the resolution is as follows. Impeaching Alejandro Nicolas Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, for high crimes and misdemeanors.
Yep, she wants to impeach him for high crimes and misdemeanors. She explains further.
Rather than adhering to an oath he took to defend and secure our country and uphold the Constitution when he was sworn in as Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Nicolas Mayorkas has engaged in a pattern of conduct that is incompatible with the laws of the United States.
Has there ever been a more clear-cut case for throwing out a federal official, than Alejandro Mayorkas? I mean, this guy...
Unlawful presence in the United States will alone not be a basis for an immigration enforcement action. But
I'm not going to deport anybody for just being here illegally. It's not like that's a crime or anything. What was that word I just used? Illegally? Yeah. Hey, coming up, Mark Paoletta will be with us in moments. Democrats, they don't like borders, and they don't like the Supreme Court. They're looking to destroy Clarence Thomas yet again. Mark Paoletta with a spirited and wise defense of that great Supreme Court justice up ahead.